Okay. So let's get started. I'll start off by, first few slides, very briefly talk about, me and my work. We'll keep it really brief, and it's almost at the cost of repeating myself for people who are joining me again for the second or the third session. So we'll keep it brief. So my name is Aman Dubey, and I work as a learning strategist with a learning design studio called Learn Tech. This is an outfit that I run and manage. And at LearnTech, we work with various clients and organizations to create design and technology based products in the learning domain. Brief about me. I've had a little bit of a long career in the L&D domain for last almost 20 years now. I've been recognized as a top 25 most promising HR consultant in India by Consultant Review magazine. I'm also author for the book of a book called Gamification for Training Leaders. This is the best rated book in the category in Amazon India Kindle store. I'm an active blogger on LinkedIn. If you are not connected with me on LinkedIn, I would love to get connected with you. I have, I always like posting stuff that I'm working on. So, and I always like reading up what, other people in my network are doing. So it'll be a great place to stay connected. And, I love giving, going out and meeting people in the fraternity and doing some keynotes. So I've had some opportunities, for example, at IIT, ISTD, Amity, and various others. So this is, I think, why you would want to listen to me for this session. About I would say about 2+ years back, I wrote a book called Training Leaders Guide to Leverage Gamification Successfully for Organization Learning. This book was very well received by the people in the industry, and I'm happy to share a link with you in the chat area where you could sign up for this book and really download this book absolutely free of cost without really going without putting any money in Jeff Bezos's pocket. So I'm on another tab. I'm quickly pulling up the link, which I can share with you. So here is the link in the chat area. If you would like to, feel free to sign up for this book, and you will get it in your email and also on the confirmation page. Also take a minute to read through some of the comments that I have received on the book by industry professionals. So that's what over the years has given me the confidence that, what we are saying and doing is not exactly completely wrong. So maybe there are some good parts in it that people are liking. So let's get started, guys. Today's scope of the session is to bring gamification into the classroom setting. Now, so, gamification is associated with digital learning mostly, and with digital apps, with, games and things like that. And I've always, received this comment from people to say that how is it that we can apply gamification to a classroom, or can it really be applied to a classroom setting? Although within the digital space, there is a lot of opportunity and degrees of freedom for us to, create what we want, and, have people go through an experience which could, be of our choosing. However, in the classroom, the dynamics are very, very different. You are with real people live. So how can we use gamification to supercharge what happens in the classroom, especially the engagement piece, is what we are going to talk about. So here is a quick review of the gamification concept. If you have had the time to, to download the book, you will go through this image in detail. But let me quickly walk you through how I perceive gamification and what are some things that I call the important ingredients of what can be a gamification experience. Dr. Anthony, I'm reading your, comment. Interesting study in the newspaper from the Life Search poll says that the digital conversation has overtaken face-to-face discussion. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? I think, very soon, husbands and wives and brothers and sisters, all of us will be connecting through Skype, and we'll just miss on to the old style of just sitting next to each other and talking to each other. So anyway, coming back to the topic, so let me take a quick overview, 1 minute crash course into what gamification really is, and people who are new to gamification or have used it, it will be a revision. For people who are absolutely new, it's a quick 1 minute boot camp. So gamification, I've divided into three different aspects of what gamification really means and can do. To provide a structure to how we can understand these concepts of gamification, there are three major categories. The first category is structure of the game. Structure of the game basically means creating a navigation structure. How does the game look like? How long it is? What are some milestones? Getting around from here and there. So that's about the structure. The second is, of course, the rules. So every game that we know of has rules. So even if you're putting together a gamification intervention, even if it is in the classroom, we have to be mindful of the rules. That how do we communicate the rules? What are the rules and things like that. And third is how to win. So it's like a cheat sheet. All of us are playing games on Androids and things like that. There is a concept of cheat sheet. Now, cheat sheet has some psychological implication as well, which means that if people are playing a game and they're not able to make some headway in that game, they will quickly tune out or lose interest in the game. So, the concept of cheat sheet is that there is something that tells you how to hack the game, or something that tells you here are the best practices. If you follow, you will win the game. So ideas like that are absolutely pure gold when we apply this to training, because people really love it. Trainees really love the idea that, hey, there is a shorter way, and if I have this secret information, if I just follow that, I'm going to win this game. So it's also about packaging of how we communicate this information to trainees, but to understand as a concept, how to win is a major part that creates structure of the game within the gamification construct. The second piece we're going to talk about is group dynamics. So game, you can obviously play solitaire, which is an individual game. But in our context, for training purposes, game dynamics is a very, very important piece that we want to build in to drive engagement. So to build game dynamics, there are basically three ideas that I want to talk about. The first is idea of milestones. Now, what is a milestone? Milestone, we all know that, if you are going from point A to point B, then any point within that A or B area can be called a milestone. So similarly, in a game, what we want to do is break the game up in milestones or in levels, so that the whole piece, the whole navigation of the game doesn't look too longish and boring. So there are pit stops, so to say, where you could stop and take stock of what's happening and things like that, maybe match with each other what our scores are. So basically provide breathing space within the game really has some magical qualities if you have a longish game, or if you're building an intervention that's across a lot of days or hours. The second piece to build in the game dynamics is the idea of scores. So scores basically, we all understand scores. So you accumulate certain points basis your performance or progress. So those are called scores. And in the gamification world, scores are very, very important. And we have to be mindful of that as we build anything. Or if we want to borrow from the concepts of gamification, then these are some of the ideas that we can build on to create our own magic sauce of what we can do in the classroom. I'm just going over some gamification concepts to give you, give you ideas that you can use straight away, and to ignite certain imagination in your mind to see, hey, how can I use scores in this new workshop that I am doing? So, my submission is just that. The third piece of game dynamics is the idea of obstacles and challenges. So we know what obstacles and challenges are. That as part of learning design, there is going to be learning that gets imparted, and the learner's journey is such that he will not be receiving learning the whole time, and there would be points where the learner will be required to either apply that learning or show how much he has been able to recall or understand or can apply and things like that. So all those ideas in the gamification language, we're just calling it obstacles and challenges. And the most important part of any gamification intervention is the idea of building in positive competition, and that we could do with leaderboards and a lot of other ways, and we're going to talk about that in the session today. So guys, this is a very quick overview of what gamification concepts are. My attempt today is to empower you as a trainer and a facilitator to go out in the classroom and do your magic. And as you do that, and as you are planning the construct of how you're going to do this workshop a little differently, these are some of the ideas that I have picked from, and I'm going to be sharing from my own experience how I have been able to implement those. And of course, the caveat here is that these are things that I have used, experienced, found them to be working, and now sharing with you. And I believe each one of us as trainers and facilitators have our own style, and we have to go with what we find peace in. So I would say use it, take all this information to generate ideas for you, and there is no need to just copy and paste unless you see the merit. Alrighty, so let's get started. So here is what this session is going to be about. If you're a training manager, a business leader, fantastic. So we have slight outage here. Let me just conserve some electricity. Alrighty. So if you're a training manager, a business leader, or you're somebody who engages his team for learning purposes through classroom delivery, then this session is definitely going to add value to you. Okay. So what are we going to talk about? Going to talk about ideas from gamification that we have applied in the classroom training construct to drive the engagement through the roof. And I'm using a little bit of the sales or style marketing language to give you ideas maybe. And at the end of the day, I believe all of us are salespeople for our own workshops to our audiences. So I'm using some of that lingo, so don't get carried away with all this. The idea being that we are able to build much better engagement in the classroom if we use some of these ideas to just have people engage in these activities that we create for them. So applying gamification element to any intervention and experience can breathe a whole new life to the engagement in the intervention. And that's what we are going to talk about today. What I am sharing with you today is actually a chapter in the book on gamification that I have written, for which I've already shared a link with you. You can go out and download that book. And in that, there is a chapter dedicated to how do we apply gamification to classroom. And if you are interested, what I could do is I could upload that specific chapter in the handout area, and if you would like, you can download and follow along with me as we move through the presentation. So let me just quickly enable that. Just give me a second. Apologies, my friends. Some issue here. Just got it sorted. Um, I'm just trying to put this chapter in the handout area so that people who are interested can follow along. Alrighty, there you go. The book is now in the handouts area, this specific chapter, and feel free to download it and follow along. Fantastic. So let's move forward and see what these ideas are. First of all, why do we want to use the word gamification, and why should we use it in the classroom? So here are some reasons to ponder over. See, gamification is or and has been a new buzzword in the learning industry for some time now, and we have gone out and gamified just about anything, right from performance management systems to performance systems to learning management systems to sales trainings to new hire trainings. You think of it, just about anywhere there was a scope to apply gamification has been applied. So that said, there is clearly a merit in using concepts from gamification because they work for the learning professionals, and it creates a far better environment for the learners to really engage with each other and with the content. So that is the reason we are using gamification, considering to use gamification in the classroom situation. What I'm going to share with you are basically 9 super tips that I call, where we have applied the concepts of gamification to classroom workshop design. Okay, so we'll start off with the first step. Feel free to also download the handout from from the handouts area so that you can follow along. So in the first step, what are we really saying? We are saying that, hey, as we create our training programs, we have a lot of content to share. Okay, and what happens is that we know that inside the classroom, once the training starts and the content delivery starts happening, then people only have so much of attention span. And after a few hours, and when I say few, I mean about 2 to 3 hours, it becomes difficult for people to keep sitting there and keep absorbing more and more content, because there is clearly a cognitive overload that happens after first few hours of content delivery. So one idea that I have used prolifically is that we break up what we are doing in the classroom into 2 parts. The first part is the content part, and the second part is the assignment part. And if often a question gets asked that does that mean that if I have a 1 day content, do I break it up into 2 days and do assignment in each of these 2 days? My answer to that would be, if it allows you to do that, go ahead and do that, because at the end of the day, we know that businesses, they don't reward people basis their knowledge they have, but business rewards application of knowledge. So whatever you are teaching in the classroom, you have to find a way to give people an area where they can apply it. So as a structure of any intervention, and if it is a classroom intervention, even if it is a software training, even if it is something as boring as compliance or anything like that, I would say that break the workshop up into 2 parts. First is the content part, so you can put together all the content you want, and second is the assignment part. Just by creating these 2 blocks in any workshop, it adds a life of its own to the workshop itself, and creates better engagement. Typically, if you have been doing 1 day workshops, then a good time to build in this assignment piece is straight after lunch. So we know what happens after lunch, right? So how do we get people moving? And often we come up with the icebreakers or some activities, or move your chairs or change your partner and things like that, and that has a good effect for next few minutes, but beyond that, people want to get back to their comfortable states. So it's a good idea to build in assignments based on the knowledge that you've shared earlier in the day, and have them come up sometime around the time when the people are not feeling so highly energetic. So that's first idea, that break up all the content that you're doing into a content piece and into an assignment piece. Now I'll go on to the second one. Guys, feel free to also comment and let me know if you're following along and if you're finding value in this. Apart from that, also let me know if you have any ideas of your own that you have seen or facilitated yourself, that you would like to just share with the group, which could be related to what we are talking about right now. So the first piece, and why do how do I derive it out of gamification? See, gamification talks about a structure to the game, and it talks about milestones. So what we are really doing here is we are creating a more we are creating a structure of the game, and we are saying that as part of that structure, first part of the structure is the content, the second part is the assignment. All right. Now, often, overall, from a structure point of view, the learning program itself can be structured into various levels. So each piece of content can be divided into three-part template. In the first part, you explain the concept. In the second part, you allow people to share their experiences or insights on that. And in the third part, you can crystallize the learning by having everyone share what they have learned, even making it a form of quiz where you pose the questions to individual learners. This way, you can apply, a broad structure of concept, reflection, and application, or depending upon the nature of the content, concept, clarification, and assessment. So, very, very important, guys. Often I see when I sit through other people's programs, I realize that this is, the age old science of training delivery, where you talk about something and you give people space to reflect and then crystallize what people have been able to make out of it by articulating it with the group. Fantastic content template, guys. I'm sure if we are trainers, we are using some form of this in our own way, and I find this absolutely derived from gamification, because it, again, one, it creates a structure for us, and a structure which is tried and tested. So if you are looking into your workshop design, I would say wherever there are concepts, do not just leave concepts with with pure explanation of what these concepts are. Follow this three-step process even to elucidate the concept that you're talking about. So that's tip number two, which is to be able to use a content template for delivering content. Now, as we were talking about various components of gamification, one of them was rules. That how do you create rules? So, what we want to do with this and how we bring it into the classroom is we share the rules at the beginning of the training program about where the facilities are. And typically, we all do this, if we are in, if you're holding the workshop inside the company premises or we are going outside. So we talk about where the facilities are, rules regarding laptops and phones, and to make it more interesting and real and more binding and making it fun. So what is the idea? That you're creating certain rules for how you want people to behave in the classroom. What do we do with that? We want to now make it binding. So how do we make it binding? We'll talk about it. We also want to make it fun. So the rules become fun and adds that little bit of fun element in the classroom. So we can leverage that to our heart's content. So we can create interesting rules and associate rewards, scores, and consequence based on that. So let's see some examples of this. Now, typically, when I'm facilitating a classroom session, my biggest challenge always is that people start looking at their phones. And not to say they're getting bored in the classroom, but it's just become a second nature for us to just take the phone and, start just scrolling and things like that. So what do? We create certain rules that, hey, if your phone rings, so if your phone is not already on silent, or if there is somebody who comes in late after you give the breaks, or very interestingly, I've seen a lot of trainers also say that, hey, we are going to have a collaborative discussion, and if I hear anyone say that the word but, or the word or the phrase that won't work, or anything like that, then it is a subject of penalty, right? So what we can do as facilitators, we can create penalties for certain behaviors which are hygiene behaviors that we would like everyone to follow through. And in place of, see, once you created penalties, then what do we do with that? We, make the individual accountable for those penalties. And typically, these are sing a song for the class, or you give put $5 on the table. So it can really be anything. We've seen the crazy iterations of that. One bit that I want to add here is that the moment you want to keep one person accountable, especially the defaulter accountable for his actions, the game is smaller. Not everyone is involved. So upfront, what you could do is create a rule in which you can break the classroom out into teams. And if the defaulter is from a certain team, then the penalty is borne by the whole team. So the moment you're able to change the scope of what that penalty will impact, and bring the team into the picture, the dynamics really change. Because then what happens, that team members then discourage each other from breaking the rules, which in the first case, if the individual was responsible for any penalties, nobody cares. But now it becomes a matter of team win and loss, and that's what you want to leverage on. So we all create rules in the work classroom. After we've created the rules, let's add some penalties to it, and it could very simply be points. And as you begin your workshop, you can create multiple teams, and with each team, if any individual from a team defaults on any of these rules, then we deduct points and things like that, and the dynamic completely changes from there on. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is creating a checklist style success path. Now, what are we saying here? We're saying that the development of structure of a game is giving a sense of how to go about winning in the play that you have created. Now think of it as helping your learners identify a clear success path, probably through checklists that will improve their ability to demonstrate this newly acquired skill that you are teaching them. As a facilitator, you will love that idea of giving a how-to guide to your learners, which they can remember and refer to often. That can keep them aligned, and they, whenever they want to check back to see if they're missing on to something important, then there is a ready reckoner for them. Now these type of checklists in the classroom can take the shape of checklist for mindset, checklist for certain tasks, checklist for process, anything that one needs to follow during a process, a checklist for everything important kind of thing. So just the inclusion of checklist in the learning experience gives a stronger sense of success for the learners. Remember we talked about how to win. So what are we really doing here is, as facilitators, we are giving them tools / cheat sheets to do better with application of that concept. Now as a trainer, what we want to do is, of course, we create these learner handouts which are verbose and filled out with exercises and things like that. Make sure that there is a checklist for everything important that you want people to remember. And what I have seen with experience is checklists have great recall value. Checklists have great recall value. People often tear that piece where the checklist is and keep it with them for a longer time. So, pulling from the concept of gamification, we have to put together a how to win style cheat sheet, and that usually in the classroom is reflected through these checklists that we create for them. So this was tip number 4. I'll move on to the next step, which is make scores important. Okay. Now, remember we talked about scores earlier when we said, okay, how do we get group game dynamics built into our intervention? Scores, points, badges, these are 3 great tools available to us from the gamification toolkit that we can use. See, we all love to provide opportunity for our learners to achieve certain scores themselves via the form of quiz, either at the end of the workshop or through a formative assessment in between content chunks. It's important to know how much play the scores have in the learning experience. Now, thing about scores is that very often we land into situations where we are just handing out points without knowing what these points are for, and if they are really ethically or meaningfully earned. So that is the only caveat I would say is there when you decide your scoring or badging or point strategy for whatever activity you want to do in the classroom, just make sure that there is a meaning behind scores and nothing looks like a freebie and everything looks like it's been, earned. Now, once the scores are out there, what do we want to do? We want to make scores important. So you can either put up the scores down on a flip chart, which most of us do in the classroom, or on a whiteboard, which we all do. You can also hand out some colored sheet cutouts as bookmarks. You can even make motifs on a straw that is usually used in children parties. So guys, I have seen trainers go really crazy with this, and it has an amazing effect, right from all those small little thingies that we get for our children for birthday parties, distributing them as a way to give teams an opportunity to celebrate when they reach a certain point, or if they are in lead and things like that. It just adds so much of fun element in the classroom. The thing that we as facilitators have to keep in mind is that we have to make scores important and make scores visible and constantly keep referring to scores and keep people aligned to where they are vis-a-vis each other. So if we just do that and carry some like I said, some fun material that you can hand out to people and say that, hey, from the time that this team is leading, they get to either blow this whistle or wear this hat, or anything like that. We can go crazy with, depending upon the organization and the maturity of audience. That has some tremendous impact on overall engagement of people inside the classroom. So my tip really here is that make scores important, and I pull this up really from the concepts of gamification. Hello, Polina. So I pull this up from concepts of gamification. Why? Because in gamification, creating a game-like experience for a non-game-like activity, scores are really the drivers of that game. So if you are in a classroom and you want to build in fun, go ahead with the whole idea of scores, points, and badges, and feel free to run wild with what all you can do. The only thing you have to keep in mind is keep them visible, keep them at a place where everyone can see, and constantly call out who's ahead, who's not, who's lagging, who's leading, things like that. And then allow them to have some fun if they're leading and things like that. Okay, so I'm going on to the next one. Now, we talked about game dynamics, and we said that in the gamification concept. So one other thing that trainers have to be mindful of is that people inside the classroom, once you build in the idea of competition, then the dynamics change completely. Then you are not just learning for yourself, but you are learning to win for your team. So just to bring in this mind shift, I think every trainer or facilitator must attempt it in their classroom, and there are some fantastic ways to do it. One way, which is an over abused way of doing this, which I, by the way, love, is to as you go into the classroom to do a certain activity, you can break them up into certain groups, and you can have those groups, give them a 5 or a 10 minute breather and say that, hey, why don't you come up with an identity for your group? You can come up with some sort of a battle cry or a song for your name a song and things like that for your team, and then use those summited team names or battle cries or whatever on board to really identify which team it is, and allow them as much opportunity to bond with each other and create their unique identity. So if you have a workshop where you are going to be with the participants for over a longer period of time, more than a day, more than 2 days, and things like that, it's a fantastic idea to create subgroups from your class, and allow them to create unique identities and have them really bond with each other with battle cries if they make an achievement. So that's again a great way to engage team members in the classroom. Now, one of the piece that I'm often called out on is that if with gamification and digital learning, it's so much easier to talk about scores and badges outside of the classroom, because it's usually in the mobile apps, and people can just log in with their learner profile and see where they are vis-a-vis everyone else and things like that. But outside of the classroom workshop, where the workshops are being held outside of the classroom, it's very difficult to carry on that communication of scores and badges and things like that. So in what we help organizations do, we with whom we work with, and we help them engage their participants better. We get them to create some kind of physical leaderboards, and these are very very simple tools. What we could do is that typically every organization would have some kind of a display board, and on that display board you literally are in the old school style, sticking up things and pinning up things, and if it's a magnetic board, you're arranging things on that board. So why don't you make the leaderboard of or the team board of your last held workshop stay up there for a longer period of time? So what will it do? It will do the magic of people constantly calling out to each other and feeling good if they are at the leading end, and it will also inspire people who are in the second or the third position to do better in the upcoming workshop, or so it's a great way to keep the continuity of engagement if you have multiple workshops planned for your people. And you could literally have leaderboards for teams, and you can have leaderboards for individuals as well, depending upon if you're basing it on a quiz or anything like that. Second piece I would like to talk about, which I think all of us can use, and it's got fantastic recall value, is to use the leaderboards in the newsletter. Guys, we do a lot of new hire style trainings for our customers, and one ask always is that how do we engage our new hires? How do we keep them motivated after the first few days of super excitement has withered away? Then how do we still keep these people connected to the organization and feeling excited and things like that? And often we turn to this tool, which is to publish the leaderboards in their newsletters. um, I know a lot of people do not do this. It's a fantastic tool, guys. What we need to do is that once you have all the scores from whatever assessment style activity you have done and scored people, just publish that on the newsletter and have it sent out to a wider audience. It just creates so much more recall. People get recognition, especially new hires, from everyone in the company, and people who have done well, they pride themselves for having put in more effort. People who haven't done well, they make secret promises to themselves that they are going to do better in the next time. It recognition on scores is just a fantastic way to engage people. Put some kind of unsaid pressure on people who are not doing so well, and give a sense of pride to people who have done well. So fantastic way to drive engagement, and by the way, works fantastic with adults as well. So we are talking all about teaching adults, and these activities, everything that I'm saying is tried and tested, at least in my own experience, and I know this works. I haven't had anyone come back to me and say that no, we don't want to do this, people will feel bad. I've had actually very senior people like managing directors or CEOs of the company often putting up this objection that will people feel bad. And my answer always is that why would they feel bad? I mean, people are on different salaries, right, in an organization. Do they feel bad about it? And if they do, they work towards getting where they want to. Similarly, if people have appeared for, so to say, if they were judged, or they went in for an assessment, or they attained certain scores, what is wrong with that? And frankly, beyond that objection, I've never had people come up and say that because you published my leaderboard, you published me in the leaderboard, now I am almost feeling suicidal. So that doesn't happen. I think we work with mature audiences, but I would still say that use your best judgment and use it judiciously, but do not pull yourself back when there is an opportunity where it's going to work well and there is no apparent problem that you would see with this playing out. Do not hold yourself back, just go all out on this. It really works its magic. The recall of the intervention is that much more longer and sticks in people's hearts, especially the ones who are on leaderboard. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is obstacles and challenges. It's a major part of what the gamification toolkit offers us. So let's take a minute to understand what this means and what we can do about it. So, what are basically obstacles and challenges? They are key components of gamification experience, and there are multiple ways in which we can create them in the workshop experience. So, see, we already are doing some informal quizzes. What are informal quizzes? So, the facilitator stands in the middle of the room and says, "I'm going to ask 5 questions. There are chocolates in my hand that I will give away." Things like that. So we're doing informal quizzes. We are doing formal quizzes. So we are handing out, sheets with 5 or 10 questions, multiple choice. People fill that out, and while the workshop is carrying on, a coordinator or a co-facilitator is marking them, and things like that are happening. So you have informal quizzes and you have formal quizzes. Now, what we want to really do is do some branding exercise. So what is a branding exercise? Quizzing is so done and dusted with. We don't want to use the word quizzing anymore. It sounds like you are in a classroom for small kids. So we want to brand it with something that for the learners looks like an obstacle. um, One of the things that we talked about in the earlier webinar that we did on gamification one-on-one for training leaders was to be able to create a story and get people some kind of an immersive experience of role playing in as part of that story. And obstacles and challenges, they tie in very well with your complete storyline. So let's say in it the company has come up with a new mandate, a new mission, vision, or new business objectives and things like that. And as leaders or as facilitators, when we want to weave in the mission of the company with what they are doing in the classroom, then branding these obstacles and challenges becomes that much more fun and relevant. We are doing digital quizzes. We are doing so one thing I want to talk about is that so many of us have stopped using paper and pencil quizzes in the classroom because it's just so tedious, so that somebody has to mark it and do those manual calculation doesn't work anymore. But now what all of us are getting towards is that, hey, let's take a 5-minute break, open your LMS app and go to this quiz which is now assigned to you. Go ahead and do that quiz, and as people do that quiz, it updates real time for the facilitator to see how people are doing. So that's one way to do that. And calling your quizzes obstacles, some form of obstacles and challenges, really elevates the game from just being a classroom training to almost a mission like battle preparation, in a way, if I could call that. So basically the idea here is that we are anyway doing these assessment activities. We want to rebrand them, put a storyline around it, and call them obstacles and challenges, and make this a part of a bigger storyline that we have for them, which we could serve them right up front at the beginning of the classroom. And the whole branding of your training program could be like that. So we've done a lot of programs where we say that as you enter the room, you become a warrior or you become a mountaineer, or you take up a certain role. And the navigation of the game, the way we lay out how the content is going to look for you, all that has been from a visual perspective, given that theme of that storyline that you're building for them. So obstacles and challenges are great ways to weave within that storyline these opportunities for assessments. And of course, calling them a little bigger than quizzes and everything just adds a feeling of that you're doing something more than just a quiz. So as simple as that. One other piece that I want to call out here is that level 1 style feedback, Kirkpatrick style, is of course done. Then we like to do the knowledge checks, which are usually the quizzes that we go in for. Third is on the job assignments, and this is something that I do not see a lot of even trained and veteran facilitators also get into. But it's a great way to have people pick up a task that they would do on their job, and maybe have some kind of an assignment that they can do. And it is up to the facilitator to leave it for the learners to either pick up a job of their choosing, or give them the same task. So you could if I'm teaching a class on sales training, I might just give them an on-job assignment, which is that how can you start a conversation with somebody who's trained. So let's take 15 minutes and let's just go out of this workshop and go to the go to the road, or go to the place where there are more people apart, more people that you don't know, and let's strike up conversations, and let's come back after 15 minutes and let's see how many conversations we were able to strike and what we were able to know about those people. So adding elements where there is on the job reality kind of tasks built into it has a whole different play that people remember for a very long time, and they are able to get jolted out of their comfort zone where they have to apply something which they have just learned. So great way to build in obstacles and challenges. And once you are doing a on job task slash assignment, then it becomes even more worthy of the word obstacle and challenges rather than just calling it a quiz. So I would say ideas for all of us as facilitators to build into our learning design and say that what kind of on job task assignments can I give at this space, at this place. And at times it will also happen that you may not know what this specific person might want to choose, and you've given them an opportunity to choose a task of their own and things like that. There people tend to choose, if you leave it for people to figure out for themselves, then we like to go with the simplest thing we can do, like lifting a finger. So my on the job assignment is that I will lift a finger, so people can sign up for something like that. So there has to be some check and balance there as well, where you have some kind of validation in place either by their supervisor or somebody else, like their line leader or anything like that, where people can submit, okay, this is what I am going to do in my job. And then there could be a leader who validates and encourages people to go even more out with what they're choosing for themselves. Sandeep, thank you so much for that comment. I'm just going to pick that up after a few slides. So guys, just nearing the end of what I have for you. This was tip number 8, which is to use on-job tasks and assignments, and using some kind of branding to call your quizzes more in the line of what obstacles and challenges sound like. Okay. Now, guys, this is the tip that I want to give you, which is on peer coaching. Now, see, what happens is that the game structure is not complete without an ecosystem that supports the act of helping each other. Now, coaching is an excellent tool that one could use to build community in learners, even after the workshop is over. And I frankly am a big fan of peer coaching, and I find it very disheartening that a lot of good trainers out there are not able to leverage this specific piece very, very creatively. So what happens in peer coaching is that if you've read some very early psychology on adult learning, then I remember my reading, I read something that Chinese people used to do with their learners is to create red pairs. So what were red pairs? So red pairs were a good student and not so good student. You put them together, make them sit together, and the idea is that the good student is going to help the not so good student, and he's going to improve, and then they will change seats. So things like that. So what happens with peer coaching is that if there is a behavioral style impact that you want to create, then you create pairs. Okay, inside the classroom, the trainer can assign pairs, or people can choose a pair for themselves who their partner is going to be. So what happens is that you've given a task to a person. So every person now has a task, and he has a peer coach. So what will happen is that the peer coach is going to help this person get coached on the way he did those tasks. So let me give you an example. We used to roll out in the company that I worked for as an internal resource. We used to do a lot of training around 7 habits of highly effective people, and things like that, and lateral thinking. And so what used to happen is we used to come up with activities that people can do to really demonstrate, one, find experiences in which they can play out what they have learned, and second, find a little bit of a comfort zone where they can share what they went through emotionally, and what are some challenges they faced. And there could be another person who could be in the same shoe, who would one first hear the first person out, and then give the other person some feedback. Now often I'm asked that, are peers qualified to give feedback to each other? My answer is yes, they are qualified. What do we really need? We need a checklist. So let's say, and this happens mostly in presentations, how to give a presentation style workshops. So let's say we've created some peer coaching networks, and what now will happen is that one person is standing up and giving a presentation, and his peer coach is going to work with the checklist and say that, has he followed this? So I put a tick against that box. Has he followed that? I put a tick against that box, and give a very evidence based feedback basis what he observed. So here, we only piece of working with this concept for very long that I now know is that we want to keep it very, very structured. We don't want to allow people to come up with their fancy judgments and serve it to each other. Hey, this is what I think about you. I think you're just not doing good. You're not cut out for this. We don't want to give people opportunities like that to bring each other down. So what do we want to do? We want to create some checklists, and we want to say that, hey, as a part and the scope of your peer coaching is this, that one person is going to do a certain activity, the other person will be an observer for it. If not a direct observer, then at least he will hear what the first person did, and then through that checklist, you will take out things that he felt were followed, and give constructive feedback in terms of what he found missing and what from the followed items can be made better. So that's another idea, guys. Build peer coaching networks. Once, if you're doing a one-day workshop, create a peer coaching network, create some kind of a reporting plan where you say that, okay, after 7 days or 10 days, each person should have gone through at least 2 peer coaching sessions, and that we are going to meet up, or this is the group where we can discuss, or we will reassemble or have this call later at this time where all the peer coaches come together and they share experiences of how much they have developed over the last 2-3 times that they have coached each other. A fantastic tool. It doesn't require a penny more from any fund. All you need to do is just leverage the network which is already out there, and create these microstructures so that people have somebody to go to, and they are able to have a very mature conversation constructively, and have evidence for what they are saying. So just give people those tools, and we are good to go with that. So again, pulling from gamification, and gamification allows us to create networks where we can help each other out, by the example of how to win, rules, and cheat sheet. And peer coaching is not directly from gamification as a concept, and here I've translated exactly how it was, but we can derive this from what the tool set of gamification offers to us. All right. So so finally, what I want to talk about is like a bonus tip, and we've talked about this in some flavor, but I want to spend more time on it, which is supercharging the recognition. Guys, I've quoted this before. I'll say this again. One of the most profound things that I read while I was reading something on Napoleon Bonaparte was that he had somewhere quoted. He was quoted as saying that Napoleon is saying himself that I have found a remarkable thing, that people will die for ribbons. I don't know how many years back I read that quote, and it has stuck on with me, because it just goes to show that how crazy are we as human beings, how attached are we to recognition. And all we need to do as trainers is recognize that need and fuel that need, really, and then direct it in the right way, so that we are able to get what we want by using this technique. How can you supercharge recognition? Guys, I have seen CEO level guys sitting in a room fighting for a 5 rupee or a very small amount of chocolate, where the trainer has not given them the chocolate, and they felt they have all the right in the world to get that chocolate because their answer is right. I've seen very, very senior people just lose their mind over not getting something which they think they are entitled to. And I've seen people lose their mind, when they start lagging behind another team or another person. So is that good or bad? I would say all of that is good if we can direct those energies in the positive direction. All one thing that I've seen, and I've seen one of the trainers in the company that I work for use this very, very effectively, is to have some kind of foam crowns. So what are foam crowns? They are insignias that we can buy off in party stores for children. Basically, it's a crown made out of foam, and you could literally have a few crowns in your in your toolkit. And whenever you are creating some kind of activity where people can be recognized, and you want others to also see who's that recognized person is, just give them a foam crown and they can wear it for the whole time, uh, unless it obviously gets taken away from them to another head. But that's a great way to supercharge. If you supercharge the recognition piece of your design for learners, then it is going to have tremendous impact. I've also witnessed interventions where winners of a certain activity in a classroom, they get to have tea with the CEO, or they get even more recognition by getting a half an hour time or visibility with some senior leaders. So the whole idea is that who is winning in your game, it should be a big deal, and it's your job to make it a big deal. And trust me, this all these things like getting a half an hour time with the senior leader, getting a lunch date with a CEO, and stuff like that. This is low cost, high value, as we say in marketing. So as an internal trainer or a consultant, you should find ways to create those alignments and have people sponsor you for something like this, and just go all out on letting the world know that there was a training, and in that training was an activity, and this is the person or this is the team who won that. So I think more we are able to take the recognition piece and blow it out of proportion, more it helps us as training professionals, because people build a higher recall, and people really want to be in those shoes of people who are winning. So it creates further motivation for people to do better the next time. I've also seen people handing out, pens with some kind of an insignia on it, like a champion or something like that, which they can give to people if they, answer something correctly. And the moment they people would put their pen, on their shirt, then it will. So it's like a card that you're wearing. So, guys, you get the idea that create some kind of a visual recognition and then blow recognition out of proportion if possible. It's going to do tremendous service to the learning intervention that you are putting together in the classroom. So, guys, this is all I had in terms of some ideas that can supercharge your classroom intervention. All right. I'm happy to take any questions. Sandeep, I'll start with you. Guys, you don't have to raise hands. Just feel free to type in the chat area what your ideas are, and we'll be happy to discuss those. All right. So, Sandeep, let's look at your question. You're saying one approach, design on job tasks at the designing stage, which are linked to behavioral shifts we intend to make in the learners, as well as create business impact for which the training program has been designed. Fantastic stuff, Sandeep. Fantastic stuff. So, I'll, for some very, very peculiar trainings like sales trainings, presentation trainings, and things like that, you can come up with so many of these tasks that are relevant for that person, which are actual on job display of that you've learned something. It's just crazy, and all we need to do as trainers is to have that inventory of tasks and attach a task to every concept that you're talking about, and give people create peer networks. So one of the challenges that trainers always face is that after the workshop is over, it's very difficult to follow up with everyone, right? Now here, with if you leverage the peer coach network, then what you're able to do is you're creating a monitoring mechanism with every learner. So create these tasks, hand out these tasks, and create a monitoring mechanism like a peer coaching network, which will not eat into your time too much at all, apart from putting that into place. And there you go, you've got fantastic and people are going to remember that, hey, I learned how to persuade people using this model, and I'm going to apply it, today in this meeting. So I learned how to open meetings, and I'm going to do that, and this person is going to observe me and give me feedback. This is what I did. So the kind of things that you can create. And often, Sandeep, I would say that often we are asked as training fraternity that what you are teaching and what's happening on the ground, there is a big gap, and I'm not sure if that gap is getting covered. So as you create these on job activities, the bridge between what was taught in the classroom and what actually happened on ground, you're building a bridge within these two areas. So fantastic comment, Sandeep, completely agree with you. Okay, so I'm looking at guys. Feel free to also share with me if there are any ideas that you know of or you have used, which can be of benefit to the community, and we'd love to discuss those ideas as well. Okay, so Kunal, you had earlier said that use post lunch session for hands on in case of technology and skill training. Fantastic. So yes, post lunch sessions, people tend to feel drowsy, and if you talk too much at that time and give them a space where they don't have to move much, they fall into some kind of a slumber that we know always happens. And we have to creatively come up with ways to utilize that post lunch timing. For any kind of an activity where they are constantly engaged in something, not sitting and listening. So it could really be a hands-on technology and skill training. So you learned about this product or this software. Now post lunch we are going to apply that, or let's do a very small task in Excel that we learned in the first session. So I completely agree with you, Kunal. This is exactly how we want to use the post lunch areas for assignment, so that they get off their laziness, and once their mind is engaged in doing something, they are the whole body responds to that. Okay, Dr. Anthony, I think now has left the room, but he left this message that I have heard the term chunking to make smaller sections of content, or pacing in a live event. Dr. Anthony, we talked about it. That was the first point, that break up the content and break up the intervention into concept and assignment. And even for the concept piece, use a three step process of talking about the concept, getting reflection from people, and then crystallizing by getting everyone to share. So fantastic drills, and nothing new, guys, here. Only I'm putting a perspective to all of this to say that there are these 9 to 10 items that I'm sharing with you, which are each one of these items have merit of their own, and you could really just pick and choose the ones that you like and just inject it in your learning design for the next workshop whenever you want. So I want this to be like a quick reckoner of what all you could do last minute to engage people in your session. So just use it like that. It's in the handout area. You can refer to it whenever you want. Okay, so Dr. Anthony had some other observations, and he said, "Okay, can we reverse engineer the sequence of starting with the problem, not the content? This learning design can promote learners in making the content or a solution." Fantastic, fantastic. So I will share it with the group, guys. How about we don't start with concept and we start with the problem? What do you think about that? Let me know in the chat area. So what we are saying is we start with a thinking activity. We don't start with, welcome to this, and we are going to cover this, and, this is where the facilities are. We don't do any of that. We start with the thinking activity. Okay, guys, welcome to the room. Here is the problem that you see on the screen. How are we going to solve that problem? So what do you think about that? Let me know in the chat area. Is it a good idea to start with something like a thinking activity right up front? All right. So I will, once I see some comments. All right. So Kunal, I'll just pick up your question. So just coming back to the earlier statement we were making, that is it a good idea to start with something which is purely a thinking exercise, not concepts. I would say that use it judiciously. I'll tell you some of my experiences I've had with an approach like that. Typically, if you start with something of a question and ask people to come up with an answer, then in my experience what has happened is that people have given absurd answers and they have stuck to their guns in regards to that answer. So it's for me, in my experience, it can become slightly unmanageable and can go out of control, where without the context of what the scope of that training and that discussion is for that day, if you jump into a problem, people come up with solutions and they don't want to be told that the solution is not right or partially right. They think they're 100% right, and it turns into a little bit of how do I now handle this person kind of situation. So I would say use it judiciously. If you think as a facilitator you can pull it off and make people sit down and say, "Oh, I see point in what you're saying." If you think you have that capability and it's going to work 100% of the time, I would say go ahead, and absolutely no reason why you should pull yourself back. So Kunal, you asked me, do badges really work in adult learning situations? Kunal, let me tell you, badges do wonders. Yeah. Uh, we've gone to the length of really cutting out badges from foams and getting a vendor to do that for us, where a badge says champion, and another badge says ustad, and things like that, depending upon uh, who's the client and what we are doing for them. Badges do wonders. So you look at the army, the way military personals dress up. What they're really wearing on their shirts are insignias and badges, right? I mean, the pips, their stars, and everything else. They are adults and they're very, very serious, focused people. And if it works for them, my bet is it might work for us as well. So they work. In my experience, I've not had people come back and say, "What is this? I don't want this." That never happens. People just love an extra pair of recognition. They just love that. So Aditi, your question is absolutely works because it brings it prior learning. Absolutely, Aditi, I would agree with you. I think uh, the timing for everything in the workshop has to be thought of. And if you want to pose a question and you've talked about how to look at really that question from what kind of a lens, and what to really recall to solve that answer, if you're able to set context and give people a direction on which they can think, then it works great. Sandeep, we are saying that thinking demands more focus. Thinking activity should slip in gradually. So, Sandeep, I would agree with you. Uh, Thinking activities are great activities once you've set some context and given some direction on the lenses you are getting people to use, and then thinking activities are great. Hello, Aneshwara. Aneshwara Mukherjee. So we are saying I have used this approach for tool-based training, and it worked. And it worked as the audience could relate with the problem and were curious to know how that tool will handle those problems. So I would agree with you. So let's say you're doing a training on Excel, and you come up with a problem and say that, hey, I have to create this sheet from these 5 sheets, and I have to use pivot tables, and how would I do that? And the context is set, the boundaries are set in which you're going to think. So I would say that where it's easier for people to assume what the context and boundaries are, go with something like that. But let me give you another example. If it's a behavioral style training intervention, and you start off with something like, you're not able to get funds from the management, and this is the case, what would you do? you know uh, in behavioral style workshops, it's difficult to say that you are right and you are wrong. Of course, we could we always are on the side of saying that everyone has their own style and some styles work better than others. So that's the stand we take as trainers and facilitators, to help people make sense of the behavioral material that we are giving them. So I would say that if the context of how to think about it is clear and can be assumed safely, then it makes all sense to start with a question. Thank you for that comment, Kunal. Yes, Kunal said, keeping the military analogy in mind. Absolutely. And, let me tell you this. My father was in the army, and, he used to wear these stars, and I used to get so fascinated. And this is not when, I was just a kid. Of course, I was fascinated then, but even later, I used to just find this whole, the whole thing of wearing something on your dress that's like an insignia and kind of talks about where all you've served, and where you've come in terms of rank and in terms of places you've gone to war in. It's just so fantastic. It's just amazing. So Fantastic. So, guys, let me know if there is anything else that comes to your mind with regards to what all we can do in the classroom to supercharge the classroom environment. These were all the ideas that I wanted to share with you. I'm just going to just wait for a minute and see if there are more questions. Guys, also feel free to let me know how you're feeling about the Learning Design Summit, if these sessions are creating any value for you. Um, and if there is anything that's coming to your mind in terms of that, these are some other pertinent challenges that were not addressed in the summit, and you could give me those inputs. We've right now I'm in a state where a lot of speakers, a lot of experts in their areas are getting in touch with me and saying that, Aman, we want to be part of, we want to take our knowledge also to the community, and help people and create that community of sharing. So I'm happy to really listen to you. Tell me what it is that you would like to see happening for you, that you would like to attend, and I will get on the job with that. So Sandeep, you're saying in behavioral, what we have found is that you start with the problem, introduce concepts, ask questions to the audience to surface the contradictions, and then ask participants to revisit their original thought pattern. Fantastic. Fantastic, Sandeep. So, before and after, how would you have done without this knowledge, and how would you now do it? Fantastic contrast building, activity. And typically, I know that a lot of people who do trainings on presentation skills, they get people to, present on a certain topic without the training. And then after 2 days and the second, later part of the second day, they ask the same people again to present on another topic. And then all that is video recorded, and you can, then see that how much that person has changed. So, it's a good idea to always create these, before and after effects, and create these contrasts that people see for themselves, that how much they have progressed in terms of learning. Okay, Kunal, we are saying in e-learning, levels are easy to plug in, but not sure how they would fit in into a classroom situation. In e-learning, levels are easy to plug in. So when you say levels, do you mean levels of evaluation, like the Kirkpatrick levels of evaluation, so level 1, level 2, level 3, or would you mean that level 1 e-learning, level 2 e-learning? So just clarify that for me, Kunal, and we can take up this question. I'm not sure what you're meaning, but let me just attempt it as you write this down. If you're meaning that how do we create assessments and create those levels of evaluation in the classroom, I would say the way we create evaluation strategy is really agnostic of whether it's a digital learning or whether it's classroom training. The modalities of how you want to administer your tools will depend completely upon you, and it doesn't really matter if something is getting delivered in the classroom or via digital. Of course, with digital you have more degrees of freedom, but in the classroom you can still go out and do the same levels of evaluation that you would with even with something that is digitally delivered. So to All right. So you're saying just going from one level of learning to a higher or a next level. So, here, an example I would quote is that in an e-learning, when we are creating a game, we can create levels and we can say, hey, this is your first level. The variables are few and the complexity is not that much. And after you pass from this level, the second level, the complexity is going to be more, the variables, new variables will be introduced and things like that. So we can create some kind of complexity in e-learning very, very clearly, and in a fun way that people can also see. You can do the same things within the classroom using the age-old quizzing technology, which is one person asking a quiz or putting up questions on the screens and asking each team what the answer is. So within that modality, you can still use, you can create levels. So think about, the program Who Wants to Be a Millionaire / Kaun Banega Crorepati that comes on Indian TV. So as you would see that the first few questions that do not get you that amount of money are fairly easy questions. They're really idiot questions. And then as you move on, the at last the 1 crore question or the 10 crore question, I think now, those are not easy questions. Those are questions that will require somebody to wreck their brain and have that level of competence to answer those. So even in the classroom way, you could ask the first 10 questions, which are easy go questions, and then the next 10 questions, which are little intermediate, and next 10 which are advanced. And you can call it out right up front that this session is divided into this quizzing. I'm going to ask 30 questions and of 3 different levels. So we are starting with the basic level. So let's see who gets the maximum points there. So you could do that. In my view, that's a good way. All right. So guys, feel free to comment and let me know how you're feeling about it. If this session was of any value, I'm quickly going over and all right. So what I want to do is ask you if there are people who are finding value in Learning Design Summit. I will request you to leave me a testimonial for the summit and for any specific speakers. If you found value in any content at all, please let us know. And it doesn't have to be all great things that you say to us. We're open to feedback. So let us know how we can improve, and let us know if you found value in any of the sessions. Please spend that 1 minute for us, because we are right now in the phase of planning the next version of this summit sometime in March 2020. And as we reach out to I think and we mobilize more people in the community, we would love to have your experiences shared, so that people who would then join will be able to see that, am I really going to find any value in this summit or not. All right, so just give me a second. Fine. Thank you so much, Pravina, for all this, for your comments. And with that, guys, I'm wrapped up in terms of the content. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any, and look forward to seeing you again very soon, which is tomorrow, for brand new sessions. And till then, I would say take the time, sign up for sign up to become part of the community at LinkedIn and Facebook, because that's where most of the discussion with new speakers and existing speakers, people who've signed up for coaching, all that is going to happen. So we're going to keep all our updates posted there. So sign up for that community. And like I said, if you would like to write us a few lines on the link that I just shared above. And you could also sign up for a coaching session for most of the speakers, actually all of them. And once you express your interest, then it will be my job to take that information to respective speakers and arrange for a one-on-one time with you guys. So thank you so much, Aditi. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Pravina, for your lovely comment. Thank you, Kunal. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And we're going to wrap up the webinar here, and we'll see each other again tomorrow morning. Till then, bye-bye, and keep rocking the classroom. Thank you.